and for you attending this session and giving us this time of your day. I will turn it over to our, again, student highlight, which is Zoe. Zoe, can you please tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and just everything that you're doing with NEPM?
Absolutely. I didn't know I was going first. Oh my goodness. Good evening, everyone. My name is Zoe Naglieri Prescott, and I graduated from Bay Path in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic with a bachelor's in communications and a minor in marketing. And I started my internship in 2020 at New England Public Media on the set of the bilingual TV show Presencia. But because of COVID, that got kind of, thrown into the depths of despair, and we didn't know what to do. So we shifted our focus, and I ended up in the education department as an intern for Media Lab, which is the youth learning initiative where we teach students how to be producers of content. So we teach them how to do podcasts, video production, and really find their voices and confidence in sharing their stories and their opinions with the world. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I started off as an intern there, and I am now a full-time employee working with Vanessa Pabon, Johan Rashi Vega, Bess Capitanis, and Denise Vazella. And it is such a wonderful experience. I get to work with students in the Springfield and Holyoke areas in middle school, high school, and college almost every day, teaching them what it's like to be in media, how to do fun stuff, how to make TikTok videos. Thank you, Zidalise. And it's just been a really fulfilling experience for me. I get to see students who may not have had the opportunities growing up to use their voices and advocate for themselves. I get to work with them to find their voices and build that confidence to go out and challenge politics, challenge the status quo, and just be confident in who they are on a daily basis. Another thing that I am proud to be a part of is Johan and I created a radio-based podcast show called Fresh Music Out of the Crates. And we curate that on a weekly basis, featuring music from artists all over the world in different cultures from different languages, and highlighting artists that are not mainstream, that probably nobody has ever heard of. And that has been a really interesting and fulfilling experience for me. I get to, listen to music and share my musical taste with people, but also learn the skills of working in the media industry. I don't like my voice, but I'm on a radio show almost every week, getting more comfortable with my skills and my abilities. So I'm going to put some links in the chat. Feel free to follow us on Instagram and listen to some of our episodes. And it has been an honor to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you for being our student highlight, Bay Path alum. I'm so excited to have you here as well. And before we get started, I will let everyone know, as you might have been able to tell, we are recording right now. So if you would not like to be on camera, or we're going to use this in other places possibly, you can always turn your camera off. That is definitely a thing. And feel free to interact in the chat. Click on those links that Zoe is putting down there, meet some new people. It's going to be a great opportunity. So I will go ahead and get started. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to make one introduction. I see Joyce Frisbee Baines here. Can we give her a round of applause? She's a Springfield a person from Springfield, grew up here. She was in our program earlier. She made 1969, and did I get it right, Joyce? At Swarthmore, was on the front line of a lot of the civil rights. Did I get that right, Joyce?
Yes, you did, Janine. Yes, I'm so happy to be here. I was so impressed with the morning sessions. I am so happy that I was there. And just to see that things are being moved along, carried on. I graduated from college, as Janine said, 1968, 69, and I was very active in the Swarthmore College Black student movement. And it's just so hopeful when I see young people continuing the journey the way I heard them this morning. So very important. I love the fact that one of the speakers talked about making your bosses feel uncomfortable, because that's the way we have to look at it, that we can't hold back. We've got to stand up. And it goes all the way back in my experience where, some of my bosses, didn't like what I had to say. Faces turned red, and I just said, well, this is the way it is. And they had to hear it. They really had to hear it. So please carry on, carry on. It's so wonderful to see all of you on the move. Thank you, Janine.
Thank you. And she has a book that we have now a portal on the Bay Path Library website there. It's called On the Move, and you can go and search out her book. And I just want to say, Suzanne Parker, Girls Inc., longtime supporter of On the Move, is here. And again, I see Carol Colburn Thomas, and many of you have heard of African American History Month. She founded Diversity Awareness Month. So I just wanted to call out those wonderful folks, and there are probably some others I've missed, and always very, very thankful of all of the committee members. And Maria Louisa, you're our first poet laureate of Springfield. Is that true? Did I get that title? Yes. So you have a lot of affirming, wonderful people with you. So there you go, Nikai.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for everyone who's in attendance, and we can definitely get started with introducing our fabulous panelists. And this is in no particular order, but please wave your hand so that you can be seen by our peoples, and then we'll get into the questions. This is just a reminder that this conversation is about difficult intergenerational conversations. I think there's always a gap in communication when it comes to certain topics between generations. And I think we should really air those out and really talk about the perspectives, especially from the Millennial and Gen X point of view. And then really give our perspective on how we can bridge that gap and really work together towards fostering change for society. Because I think with the way things are moving, we need to be in unison, we need to be in unity, we have to be able to lock arms and really use everyone's strengths to create the change and create the world for the next generation that we want to see. So without further ado, I would like to invite Amaya Phillips to wave her hand. By the way, all of our panelists use she, her, hers pronouns. And hi, Amaya. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology from Worcester State University with a minor in sociology and mental health services concentration. She graduated magna cum laude recently last year, right? Or was it this year? It was last year, right?
Yep, last December 2021.
Woo woo. So we're always happy for the students coming in and being fabulous. Now we also have Xiomara Alban de la Bato. She serves as the Chief of Staff for the Western Massachusetts Economic Development Council, where she facilitates the growth and development of a vigorous regional economy by encouraging, influencing, and sustaining capital investment and quality job growth in Western Massachusetts. She will be speaking on leadership today. Hi. And Amaya will be speaking on mental health. We have Sana Latrice Cotton. She is the founder and president of Unashamed, a 501c3 nonprofit organization which fosters emotional health in disadvantaged families that have experienced incarceration, foster care, and teen pregnancy. And also, I like to highlight that my girl is an author of one of my favorite books called Everyone Will Know It Was God. So yes, she is here and she will be speaking on religion. Hi, Sana. And then we also have Andrea St. Louis. She is a highly intuitive coach, writer, and business consultant, helping leaders and dreamers to tell their personal and business brand stories with clarity, authenticity, and the kind of eye-catching edge that gets them noticed. She is also the owner of The Tatted Professional and Step Into Purpose Consulting. She will be speaking on professionalism. Hello. Hi. And then we also have Bria Gadsden. She is an author, community health educator, nonprofit consultant, and the co-founder and executive director of Love Your Menses, a global nonprofit organization creating safe and uplifting intergenerational spaces for girls and women to learn about the menstrual cycle and how to care for their reproductive health. She will be speaking on our relationships with our bodies and body positivity and confidence. So yes, hi Bria. So I'm super excited to have all of these amazing panelists here on our stage to really talk about these amazing topics that seem to always divide generations when it comes to conversations. You know, I think that our viewpoints, our perspectives, our approaches, how we tackle these topics really separate us and sometimes can drive a wedge in whether we can really make progress in certain topics or one another. So, or whether it's professionally, in the grand scheme of government, but also just in our own families, between generations, knowing about yourself and coming into your own and defining what your generation is about. I think that is why we need to have more conversations and why we're going to have this conversation. So I will pose the first question for all of our panelists. Let's see here. I would like to know from all of you, at what point did you notice an intergenerational difference regarding your topic? Was there a conversation you had or a moment of realization that you had? Like, tell me about a moment in time that you really noticed, oh, we are different. There's a different type of thinking on this. Would anyone like to go first?
Oh. Sure. Someone else gone? All right. So hi everyone, I'm Andrea. So for me, in terms of professionalism, I think that I became very aware of it very early on. I think I want to say high school, somewhere between high school and college, but definitely around the time that I was going to get either my first job or my first internship. And I remember being told things like what I could wear and couldn't wear, but more specifically, how I could do my hair and not do my hair. And so now, like, I have a very unique haircut. I have locks. I have all the things that I was told I could not do when I initially entered the workforce. And so I think that there was a very different perception in terms of the ways that I was told that it was going to hold me back and not cause me to be perceived as a professional. And so that I would definitely say that was probably late high school, early college.
Interesting. Amaya, would you like to go next?
Yeah, for me, I would say honestly, I notice it every day. But I think I realized like growing up, it's like if you're having a bad day, whether it's like school or like the teacher did something or some, friend argument at school, and then you go tell your parents and it's like, oh, you're like 12, what do you have to be sad over? And it's like, is my mental health not like valid because of my age? So it's just realizing like, and I think that's when I realized like, wow, it's like, I feel like they growing up, they went with stuff or went through whatever, and they didn't talk about it and they just kind of went through it and they carried that trauma now, which explains a lot of so many different things. But for my generation, Gen Z, it's like, no, like I want to talk about it. I this is a problem and I don't want it to continue on. But I think just every day, just listening to different generations talk about like how they kind of just went through work, like they worked their 9 to 5 and did this and that. And it's like, you didn't have like a mental health day or like, you know what I mean? So now I feel like times are changing so much more. People are taking like mental health days and days off work, whether it's like anxiety or depression related. And it's like, that was not a thing, I would say probably even like 5 years ago. So it's definitely crazy to see how times are changing regarding like how people talk about mental health.
Thank you. Sana?
So I am representing religion and the church faith. And so I think for me personally, when I think growing up as an African-American young woman in church, there was always this certain idea of how you were supposed to show up to church. And so while we would come to church and they preach to us that church is like the place for the sick to come and get healed and get set free and all this stuff, as I became an adult and experienced life and then came back to the church, the place where they call the hospital to get healing, I was rejected. And so the conversations that I wanted to talk about, which like Amaya said, sexual abuse, being a teen mom, I'm a product of the foster care system. So there's a lot of different traumas that I faced. And so I was kind of told that I had to suppress those things and hide those things because we don't talk about that. There's a certain image that we as Christians are supposed to uphold. And so the second you start to share that, you know what, I didn't drop from heaven. I actually experienced life, then people begin to tell you, you shouldn't talk about that. That's not allowed here in the church where the sick people come to get healed. And so it to me became kind of like, what are we doing here? And I think that's literally been a big reason why a lot of young people do not attend church. They have turned away from church because they get more love and understanding from those that are not in the church, more being accepted and all those things by those that are not in the church. Because as soon as you come into the church with these issues seeking help, you are rejected.
Thank you, Sana. That was some beautiful words that you had. And I would like to kick it to Ziomara.
Hey everyone. So for me, my topic around leadership, I'd say the first time I noticed a stark and very blunt difference was actually early on in my career as working at an institution of higher ed. And I have always been a mover and shaker. I am a disruptor from an early age, really innovative and a visionary when it comes to ideas and stuff like that. And as a young, I was probably maybe around 21-ish, 21, 22. And I remember feeling so silenced by the bigger bosses because it was I felt like it was such a threat. I was such a threat in that space as a younger professional, really embracing, innovation in the workspace with colleagues, et cetera. And thankfully, I had my direct supervisor, which is actually and has been the only supervisor of color I've ever had in my career. And he's an incredible mentor to this day. And he was able to really give me a lot of insight and really share this, one, pause as a younger professional, pay attention to the differences that we're in right now in terms of generation, but also being able to just learn how to strategize in an environment like that. When ideas are really snuffed out because of this invalidation, because we're younger, right, in this workplace, and learning how to be very patient and kind through words and behavior so that we can really engage that human side and that empathetic side for one another, so that there is this pause of allowing to listen and building relationship and sharing and giving and taking. So I would say it was definitely early on in my career but I had an incredible supervisor, I had an incredible boss during that time that gave me that insight. And also as another person of color, for me, it's a different experience, you know, and just like how we navigated in a very, very white space. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, like let's keep on talking about that intersection between being a woman of color and being young at the same time. Let's talk about that. Also, Bria.
So I would say for me, well, two things. One, I knew I was having intergenerational moments when I was referring to a menstrual pad as pads, and my elders referring to it as a sanitary belt, and then referring to the belt back in the day. And so that's when I knew, okay, we have to start from a place of understanding in our experiences and where we are. And so, you know, my work is really centered around menstruation and talking about something that has always been taboo. And when we think about gynecology and the father of gynecology just experimenting on enslaved Black women against their will, for so long, Black women's pain was always disregarded. We were never given a chance to talk about our bodies, nevertheless, our periods and our reproductive health. And it wasn't until I actually began having intergenerational conversations when I started noticing my own reproductive health issues. And I remember going to the doctor and she said, well, have you ever asked your mom or your grandmother if they experienced this? And I never thought about it. And so then I started having those conversations with my mom and my grandmother and even my great grandmother. And they would tell me they had fibroids and they also experienced painful periods. And I began to learn so much about my body from hearing their stories. And that's when I truly began to embrace my body and understand it on a deeper level. But doing this work is not easy. There are still people who don't want to talk about menstruation. And there are times where I call out of work because I experience really painful periods to the point where I physically can't get out of bed, right? And I am receiving healthcare for that, but you know, a pill is not going to solve my issue. But back in the day, people showed up to work and dealt with the pain and endured it. And I think now we're getting to a point where we're like, I am not going to show up to work if I know I physically and emotionally cannot give 100%. And that doesn't make me any less of a woman. It doesn't make me any less capable of performing my job, but I physically and physiologically can't control my menstrual cycle. It's a normal process. It is not an illness. I am not sick. It's just, it is what it is. And I think as a collective, we haven't gotten to that point where we can talk about it and recognize it for what it truly is, which is a natural bodily process and nothing to be ashamed of. And so the work that I'm doing every day is around breaking that period taboo. And it starts with having conversations within my own household.
Oh, yes, Bria. Yes, I so appreciate you sharing all of those tidbits and being so vulnerable with us. And actually, now I want to pull on Andrea and Sana about this theme of living authentically, like living and standing in your truth, regardless of the institution that you're a part of. I want to know more about what those responses you have received when you started embracing who you were, you know, like standing in your truth, standing in your story. What was that experience like? And what helps you to continue pushing forward?
You want to be good? Whichever, okay. So I think for me, so I have tattoos. So that's another of those taboo things, or it was when I entered the workforce, right? I graduated college around 2008. Undergrad around 2008. And I'll never forget just all of the ways that I was told to censor myself in order to enter the workplace. I was in a predominantly white environment. It was a financial institution, so it was also primarily male. And so it was almost as if anything you did was a reflection on not only all women, not only all Black women, but all young Black women, right? Now they're all like that. And so there was this pressure to conform. And so there's an author that I love, Lovia J. Jones, her book, Professional Troublemaker, you can probably see it on my bookshelf here. She has this quote in there that I absolutely love. And she says, you aren't supposed to constantly shapeshift to make those around you feel better about their own insecurities or failures. Your job is not to chameleon your way through life to the point where you forget what your true colors are. And one day, I think I just kind of got tired of trying to fit in these boxes. And the thing that snapped me out of it was, so when we think about professionalism, we think about fitting into the culture of wherever it is we're working, we're doing business. I'm an entrepreneur now. And one of the things that I'll never forget is after years, I worked for a larger corporation for a while, and after years of, you know, trying to be that chameleon, trying to meet the metrics for whatever position I had, trying to do all of the things. I'll be honest, I started my MBA as a part of doing all the things, but while I was doing my MBA, it helped me realize I'm a graduate of BayPath's MBA in entrepreneurial thinking and innovative practices, and I realized I needed to pivot and I need to do something else. This wasn't it, and I'll never forget, on the day before my last day at the company, I had been trying to meet with one of my vice presidents for a while, my department, and that he finally met with me the day before my last day. And he said to me, he says, you came to this department like, it was like 2 or 3 years prior. And he said, and I knew from your first day here that you would be better off doing X, Y, and Z. And I promised myself I will never allow myself to try and fit in someone else's box when they recognize that my gifts belong somewhere else. And so authenticity for me means bringing my whole self to my work so that you'll never miscategorize me or misplace me again, because you're going to know that I don't fit here. Right. And then when I do find the places that I fit, I'm going to fit them so well that you're not going to think you can replace me easily. I think for me, a lot of us, Lovey has another part of this quote that I really love. She says that so many people are showing up to work in full Technicolor while the business model is still all grayscale. And I think it's really important for employers to begin to recognize that, listen, I hate to say it, but the pandemic gave some of us a lot of time to figure out this is not where I belong, or this is where I belong. One of the things I love about my business, so I'm a writing and business consultant, I do coaching. But one of the things I love about the Tattoo Professionals is that people literally come to me because they go to my website and they see me with the pictures of my tattoos. And I'll never forget, someone was like, "Ooh, that's kind of an uphill battle when you're doing career and business development and messaging, but you have tattoos on your page." Like it's contradictory for some generations, right? But I actually have found that there are older women who have been coming to me and said, I've been hiding myself and trying to fit myself into these organizational boxes for so long, and I am ready to break out. And the reason they came to me is because they can see a young woman doing her in her field. And I think for me, it's been a blessing. The more I show up authentically, the more other people are able to show up authentically. And so I think that it's time for us to stop squeezing ourselves into boxes. And I'm glad this is an intergenerational conversation, because one of the things I've realized is it's really not just young women. Yes, there are a lot of people who do hold old mindsets, but even as I listen to the other panelists throughout the day for On the Move, I heard a lot of, this is who we thought we had to be. This is no longer who I choose to be. I'm gonna be me. And I think that if we can each take the time to do that, being authentic and being the first is never easy, but you're making room for somebody else. And I am grateful to have mentors who dyed their hair and they were vice presidents of banks, or they got tattoos and they were leading organizations and running businesses, because they set the stage so that I could know that it might not be easy. There may be people who don't agree, but those are not my people. They do not have to work with me.
That was good. There was so much goodness in that. So for me, it's been an extremely interesting journey, because I ended up marrying into a first family of a church. And so it came with a big set of expectations that I needed to fill. And I did it for a while, for a long time, for the first probably 5 years of my marriage. I did it. I did all the things. I hugged the kids. I was in the women's ministry. I was at every service. I did all of that. I wore my skirts down to my ankles and the lap scarves and all that stuff that they told me I had to do in order to not go to hell. And 5 years into my marriage, the Lord had a conversation with me. It was a come to Jesus moment. And he was like, everything that I have that you have endured, every struggle, everything that you faced, that I have brought you out of, that allows you to still sit here in this pew, was not for you to sit here quietly. It was for you to sit here and tell others what I've done for you. And so in order for him to get the glory, I have to open my mouth and tell the story. And so I have, when he gave me this mandate, it started with him telling me that I was going to start wearing my story. And I'm like, well, what is that? What does that mean? And he gave me this vision of a t-shirt, and the front of the t-shirt said, I have a story that will make you believe in God. And the back of the t-shirt was the story. So for me, it said I was molested. It said I was a teen mom. It said I was sex trafficked. And I would wear this shirt to like the grocery store, the mall, like wherever I went. It became like a uniform to me because it was a conversation piece. And I remember my husband was like, where are you wearing that? And I'm like, wherever I go, like that's the mandate that I have. I have to wear this shirt. I have to start having these difficult conversations. And I remember I wore it so many places, and people would literally like stop me in the mall or wherever and be like, me too. And at first I would forget that I had the shirt on. So I'm like, you too what? And then they'd be like, I was molested, or I was a teen mom, or and it started a conversation where people were like, someone finally sees me. Like, I'm not alone. I don't have to keep suffering in silence. And so I wore that shirt, and then I said, okay, let me wear it to church. I don't know why I thought that was going to be easy. And I wore the shirt to church. And when I tell you, the people were appalled. Like, how dare you wear that shirt in here? How dare you tell people what you've endured? How dare you? And it started from the leadership. And so it got to a point where it was like, we don't want you to keep telling that story. We don't want you to do this. We don't want you to do that. And so I have faced a lot of pushback from the faith-based community, but I've decided that I am no longer going to allow people to keep me in a chokehold. I have to do what God has called me to do. And so my job is to liberate men and women to be able to stand in their truth, own their voice, and tell their story. And that is what I do. I do it when people don't want me to do it. I do it when people tell me I'm shaming their name. I do it, regardless, I do it. And I know that I am right where I'm supposed to be because there's a lot of people who have reached out to me and said, because of you, I've had the courage to break free and tell my story, or get the healing or the therapy that I needed so that I could properly heal to tell my story. And that is enough for me. I've decided that I'm going to live my life to please God, not to please man. And that has been a intergenerational issue, is that back in the days, we were taught to serve the wrong people. We were serving pastors and first ladies and all that, and not God. And so I've decided to come against the grain, and they don't like it, but it's okay because I'm here to stay. And there's a lot more women that God has assigned for me to help break free.
Woo! Talk that talk, y'all. Oh my goodness. I love both of those parts. Y'all were talking all truths and really just putting it out there. That's what I'm talking about, living authentically, living in your truth. And I think that this is the time to really step into it. Why not? Thank you, Andrea and Sana. Y'all really brought it in. And now I kind of want to shift to bringing in Bria into this conversation. I'm still going to talk to Andrea and Sana. I really want to talk about, why is it important to break the idea of taboo topics? So Sana, if you want to go first,
For me, I think it's literally to break generational curses. It is so that we can walk in freedom and not be held in bondage anymore. So I have a daughter. I have a daughter she'll be 14 next month, and or at the end of this month. And I need her to be able to have a relationship with God for herself. I don't want her to walk into the church and feel that she can't be her authentic self, whatever it is that she's going through. And that because she is being her authentic self and being human, God is not going to love her. And that he's going to judge her on her bad day, and that she's gonna go to hell because she had a bad thought. Like my goal is to break those patterns and to allow her to be free in who she is. So, for me, I do it for the generations to come, because I am that generation where our parents told us what happens in this house stays in this house, and you sweep that under the rug. And I'm the generation who sat at Thanksgiving dinners with your molester that was your uncle across the table. And we are now in mental institutes. We are now on high doses of medication. We are now drug addicts and addicted to alcohol because no one had these conversations. No one was brave enough to stand up and say, I'm not going to allow this to happen on my watch anymore. And I'm going to talk about it, and God is still going to love me, and I'm still going to go to heaven. So that for me is my goal. It's my why.
Oh, thank you. And yes, and Bria, like, let me hear what your response is to this too.
Yeah, so honestly, it's important to break taboos and to have the conversation for your own health and your own wellness. I've seen too many people suffer in silence, not talk about their reproductive health, not get the support that they need, listen to their doctors tell them, oh, you need a hysterectomy if you have fibroids, but no, there's other options available to you, but no one is educating you on that. And so you think that's your only option. Or people who have, late stage endometriosis. I've heard stories about people passing away due to endometriosis because it takes so long before you actually get a proper diagnosis. It takes multiple doctor's visits, up to 7+ years, right? It's because we're not having the conversation. We're not talking about this. The things that I do, I talk about puberty to girls as young as age 8, even younger. And the reason why is because girls are experiencing puberty earlier than our grandmothers and our mothers and our great grandmothers did, due to environmental toxins and other endocrine disrupting chemicals, but I won't get into all of that. But it's important to have that conversation early on so they fully know what's happening to their bodies and how to embrace it. If we really want to talk about reducing risky behaviors, it starts with having people be informed about their bodies so they can make informed choices. And we're too afraid to have those conversations. We don't want to talk about it because some pushback I get is, oh, well, you're talking to my daughter about puberty, she's going to want to have sex. Or if she learns about the menstrual cycle, she's going to engage in all these behaviors. And it's like, no, she's going to do it anyways, regardless. And I'd rather her know her body so that way she's prepared and she's informed if she chooses to make that decision or not. But it's important to separate education, right? And what's happening physiologically in your body and choices that people make. Those are two separate conversations, right? And so in order to break the period taboo, we have to talk about it and we have to get men involved. I love talking to dads and men about menstruation. Every time I speak with a man and they're like, oh, what's your business? I'm like, love your menses. Let me tell you what we do. I want you to repeat the word menses and period 20 times. And at first they're uncomfortable, but then they're like, actually, I have a daughter and I never had this conversation with her. Or can you tell me what the difference between ultra thin and maxi pads are? Because they told me I have to go to CVS to pick them up some pads and I don't know which one to get. And so the work that we do is actually training men about menstruation so that way they can educate each other and have those conversations. And that's all a part of breaking the period taboo, but also understanding that when you're talking about taboo topics, you have to realize that everyone has a different experience and they may not know everything, and that's okay, but you have to include them into the conversation. You can't shut them out. There are times when my boyfriend will say something and there are times I'm like, oh, well, you don't get it. You're just a man. But now I'm like, okay, let me educate you. Let me tell you why you can't tell me I just need to take an ibuprofen and I'll feel better. Doesn't work that way, boo. And so now he knows how to take care of me when I'm on my period, right? Because that is a sacred time for me. And he's a part of my journey and my menstrual experience. And we have to talk about this more. We have to get everyone involved in the conversation intergenerationally in order to break the period taboo.
Yes. Thank you, Bria. Some great words. Andrea? Yeah.
So good. So good. So Sana and Bria, they've talked about like breaking patterns for future generations. Here's the reality. As far as professionalism goes, if we don't stop calling some things taboos, if we don't stop categorizing things as stuff we don't talk about, we are missing out on our best talent, period. End of story. There are fields that are shortchanged. They don't have enough people studying those fields in college anymore. They don't have enough people working in those fields because we have called things taboo. Brene Brown, I will always reference authors because I'm a writer and I love to, join the conversation. I'm a seminarian as well. So I went to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. And one of the first things they taught us when I started that master's degree was that you are joining a conversation that has been going on since the beginning of creation. And so I love thinking of this topic that way. Brene Brown says this, she says, brave leaders are never silent around hard things. Our job is to excavate the unsaid. Brave leaders are never silent around hard things. We can't call ourselves good leaders, but there's this stuff that we're just going to ignore, even though we know it's coming up. Like you can write, we heard it earlier today in the other sessions, in the DEI session, in the career section of today's events. Like you can't say that you have a good policy if people are not implementing the action. I think the thing that has been resting on my heart since I heard it this morning was impact over activity. Impact over activity. As long as we aren't having necessary conversations, we are always going to be missing out on the blessing of our diversity, on the blessing of the gifts that people bring to the work that we're doing. I think that one of the beauties of entrepreneurship is it has allowed me to meet people in not just different fields and different walks of life, but it's also allowed me to meet people who you would never know that this person is doing this thing. Like when I look at some of my clients, I'm like, people look at them, they would never know that this person is the one who originated this thing, or this person has worked on this thing, right? I'm gonna call her out and I hope she doesn't mind. I had the privileges. I was really, leaning into the career space to learn from Nicole Polite up close and personal when I was working for her. And one of the things that I loved about Nicole's work is that when we would do interviews, she would not just say, okay, we're just looking at skills, or we're just looking at degrees, but she really taught me what it was like to do a good, solid interview, to understand the skills and the gifts that this person could potentially bring to this role, even if they don't look like the right person. And the beauty of it was, by the time she finished training me, I would interview CEOs and they would say that I made them nervous because my questions were so good, right? The reality is that we have to get better at being curious about other people. I think we are not curious enough. We're not humble enough when we enter conversations about other people. And that's why we call things taboo. If it's too hard for me to deal with, if it's making me uncomfortable, that word uncomfortable is mentioned a lot today. If it's making me uncomfortable, I'd just rather not talk about it. But you may not discover, I got into writing while working in an insurance company. I got into writing because one day the person who did the newsletter for our department went on maternity leave and didn't come back. And nobody knew I wrote. I never wrote anything for my job ever. I'd been there for 3 years, never wrote anything for them before. And they said, we need this newsletter done. We have no idea. And I was like, I don't know if I can, but I'm gonna try. I know I've been writing on the side for a bunch of things. And I raised my hand and said, I'll do it. And the first issue went out and they're like, all right, now do it again. right? And before I knew it, I became the communications co-chair for our business resource group at the time. And so like, that's where I really discovered like my writing wasn't just for me, was for the world. I say all of that to say, if you were to just look at me, well, she's never written anything. It's not on her resume. You would never have found out that you had an asset sitting right there. And so a lot of us are missing out, not just on employees, we're missing out on the mentors, we're missing out on the colleagues, we're missing out on the partners that we could have if we were willing to look beyond the stuff that makes us uncomfortable.
Thank y'all. Thank you, Andrea. That tips and tricks. Thanks to all of y'all for that. And I think that really leads very well into our next conversation. And I want to bring Ziomara back into the conversation and also keep Bria in here as well to talk about tools that each generation could use possibly to really get the most, to bridge that gap in communication and really be able to make those partnerships happen and really foster some change.
There's so much beautiful and powerfulness that has been shared already. So I'm just feeding off of everybody's energy. I think, listening to everyone, one of the things that really came to me was through leadership, just the strength of voice. So for me growing up, I'm a first generation American. My parents are from Ecuador. They immigrated here with my sister. And I grew up in two worlds. I grew up in mini Ecuador at home, then in the United States the moment I walked out, and like really juggling this multi-dimensional upbringing to completely different cultures, completely different environments and all that. And in my household, it was interesting because it was a very juxtaposed experience. My mom and dad, love them, they're amazing foundations of my life, had very traditional old school South American gender roles. The women were very silenced, quiet. The men were, very machista and all that. Like those were my parents before. And God bless them with 3 very strong women to really change that. So, and it was an interesting experience because I also learned through my father that the power of my voice was something that I needed to use as a tool, sometimes as a weapon when I needed to ensure that I needed to protect myself, my people, my community, other women around me, even though I had a very opposite role modeling, structure at home. So I say that because there's, growing up both personally and in the workplace, there's such importance of stepping in the strength of our voice and not allowing anyone to question our opinions, in a meeting or wherever we go, our pure existence when we're talking, and being incredibly confident and really holding onto that strength in everything that we do. So I do think that, at home, I experience a lot of intergenerational differences, not with my parents. I feel like they were the best controlled group for the past how many years, to have very open and honest conversation. I'm married to my wife. I'm a queer Latina woman from like a hardcore Catholic family. So I'm everything that was completely opposite that my parents ever thought they would have in a child. But learning the power of the strength in my voice and that communication was one that has worked really, really well, even with all of my younger nieces, my nephews, where we have multiple generations on that personal family side, where we have open conversation and we give space and allow space for differing of opinions and really allow ourselves to just unpack that. And for the men in my family, particularly my father, teaching our younger nephews the importance of the men in our lives to also tap into this emotional part that they've also been very conditioned to not, really acknowledge or step into. So there's that. And then in the workspace, I would say another tool from a leadership component, for many of us who are in these roles of influence and impact and power in whichever capacity that may be, I think being unapologetic in our conversation, at least for me, is really important. So very intentionally, mindfully creating a space where we're going to have a real talk, and it like laying it out in that way where we invite folks around us, whether it's team, whether it's a supervisor, whether it's a manager, whether it's a peer-to-peer, and having, very much like a peer ministry without it being necessarily rooted in that. But that peer ministry model is one that is very powerful, where we can really have these conversations with each other, and we can really we can disarm each other in a way that allows for us to have that empathy when we're trying to just listen. And I have found that to be something very powerful when I'm working with multiple generations, both younger and older generations, because I need to check myself too with some of our Gen Zers that are coming through in the workplace and like step back and just listen to some of these incredible ideas. Our Generation Zers have grown up in a like pretty much 100% digitized world. I was still dialing into internet. So it's just so different. So being able to just step back and literally be intentional with listening and reminding ourselves that we're not the smartest person in the room. We can't be. We have to be able to step back and welcome others in. So I'm going to pause there so I can let Bria share a little bit too.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That was so great. And it makes me think about one of the tools that I think anyone needs is storytelling and using your voice, right, to tell your story, because you never know who may be inspired and who may thank you for, telling your story, right? I mean, we all shared our stories today, and I know there's someone who's like, I can resonate with that, or I'm so glad that they said that, because now that makes me think about this in a different way. And I also think one tool that everyone needs is sisterhood. You need your tribe of sisters, right, to support you along your journey, whether it's professionally or personally. I wouldn't have gone through life without my sisters, whether it's my blood sister or my community sisters, as well as my community mamas and my community aunties. I need my tribe of people. I need my mentors to help me get through. I have mentors across the lifespan. I have mentors who are younger than me. I have mentors my same age. I have elders who call me. My elder will call me when I don't even know I need something, but she's always on time, right on time when I need her, right? And she could sense when something is wrong. And I think we need that in our lives, because as professional women, we're so caught up in the day-to-day, right? Sometimes we don't take that moment to be still and to self-care, and it usually takes someone else checking in on you. We all need that person to check in on us when we don't know we need that check-in. And then when you really think about it, you're like, I'm so glad that you called me, sis, because I was actually overwhelmed, or thank you for sending that care package because I really needed that. And I actually lost a dear mentor almost 2 years ago. And I just really appreciated how much she invested in me and invested in my growth, and would always send me that quick email like, hey, checking in, how you doing? Or that text. And so I encourage you all to find a mentor, and also to be a mentor to someone else and to check in on them, as well as be their accountability partner, right? I think that's so important for your growth, right? And to have that tool as you go along your life and in your journey to do amazing things. And lastly, it is so important to also have self-awareness and take that time to understand yourself on a deeper level, because every day we're unlearning and we're learning, right? Unlearning and learning, unlearning and learning. And it's important to continue that, to raise your consciousness, to continue learning yourself and embracing yourself and loving yourself fully and unapologetically. And, once you get to that point where you're so self-aware, no matter which space you're in, you can handle it and you can navigate all spaces because you have that self-awareness and you know when something is aligned with what you're supposed to be doing and not aligned. And I've gotten to a place personally where whether it's a decision I make at work or my personal life, it's aligned with what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Because I took that time to understand myself and to have that self-awareness, and everyone around me also understands that. And so definitely use your voice, have your tribe, your sisterhood. You need your sisters and your brothers too. And also take that time to focus on self and to deepen your self-awareness.
Yes, thank you, Bria. Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. And the way I want to end this out, because this has just been absolutely amazing, everyone. Like the amount of just space that we have created for all of our our thoughts and our perspectives to just really get out there in the world and really feel the solidarity in the chat. Like it's just been absolutely amazing. I'm so happy and so grateful. But I do want to end on a note from our Gen Z participant. I want to ask you, Amaya, what is your perspective on the changing landscape? And do you feel like there's enough support for Gen Z to move forward and to work and to become their best selves?
I love it. I feel like every year it just gets better and better regarding like mental health. Working in the school systems, it's so interesting because I'm just hearing left and right. Oh, my therapist told me that. Yeah, I've been seeing my therapist, and it's like, you got one of those? It's like 5 years ago, it's just like the conversation was so different where it was like, yeah, I'm not going to therapy because there is like the stigma against mental health. And I was like, oh, if I go to therapy, that means that I must be crazy, and I'm not crazy, so I'm not going. And now it's like people are, like best friends with their therapist. So it's so good to see, especially within like minority communities, especially. And just seeing people talk about mental health more and be more open about it, especially like on TikTok and Twitter, and just seeing people referring other people to therapy and just putting it out there. And there's also so many websites now where you can find like therapists, specifically therapists of color, if you want like to have a therapist that's like your ethnicity or race, just to have that relatability. You can literally just look up like blacktherapist.com and there'll be like a list of therapists in your area that you can find. And so I think that's so important because you can just have that relatability and find somebody that you can really, really trust. And I feel like maybe 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago, that was not a thing. So people just simply weren't going. And now seeing more and more people wanting to be therapists, like I, as a recent like psych major, so many of my classmates and stuff are pursuing like the role of a clinician therapist. That's the same thing that I'm trying to do too. And so it's just so interesting seeing more people, again, specifically of color, trying to get into that space and help other people like break the stigma and have somebody to talk to, because it's just so important. And so I definitely think we're going in an upward direction. Like it's definitely getting so much better. Like I'll hear my friends be like, oh, I had a mental health day. Like I'm not going to work today because I just need to focus on like me. And I think that at the end of the day, like work is important, school is important, like everything outside is necessary. But at the end of the day, if you're not right up here, everything that's outside is just going to collapse at some point. And so I'm just glad to see that people are really taking themselves more seriously.
Thank you, Amaya. And thank you everyone for being here today. Like this has been an absolute honor to host this panel, to know each and every single one of our panelists, and to really bring their stories and their perspectives to the forefront.